africawithoutborders.co.uk, africawithoutborders.co.uk. I've been reading this book by Craig A. Evans, published by Hendrickson, called Jesus and the Manuscripts, and I'm enjoying it. And he's been talking about Lucian, a historian, and Galen, a writer of that time. These were ancient writers. Lucian 120, 125, after 180, tells his friend Philo that writing history is no easy task. So we're talking 2nd century, about how they wrote. How they wrote. And I want to talk about that, okay, from this book. Now, these writers, what they do is they tell us the method. What they would do, they would have notes, and these notes they would compile from their own lectures, or a student would compile the notes. And these notes would be used for the production of a book. All right. Now, that was all pervasive even in the 1st century AD, 2nd century AD, and even before 1st century AD. Okay, we have the Maccabees writing, which also talks about the importance of writing and the method of writing, okay, which is prior to the 1st century AD. So the point what I want to get at is when the 4 Gospels were written, okay, it wouldn't just be oral tradition. Oral tradition was important. The living voice was absolutely important. But there would have been notes written. There would have been notes written, and those notes would have been kept so they could be used for writing books. All right. So you find, so that's what you find when you look at Josephus in his book Against Hapion, Lucian, Galen. They tell you the way they produce books. They had notes. Okay. So just turn with me to Luke chapter 1. Luke chapter 1. And it says, "For as much as many have taken in hand to set forth and in order a declaration of these things that are more surely believed among us." So there is the proof from Luke himself. He's saying that there many had taken in hand to set forth and order a declaration. So there were many that had taken notes about it. He's not just talking about oral tradition here. He's talking about He's talking about people have written things down. Okay. Now, what's the value of that? The value of that is that we have to remember that at least you're talking 200 years of scholarship believe that the Gospels were late productions of the church because it was oral tradition, and this oral tradition was shaped and changed over many, many generations. And as it was shaped, the oral tradition, by many, many generations, then they were finally written up by certain groups. This was the all-pervasive view, which was standardized by Rudolf Bultmann and scholars like him. There was no room for any possibility of any other idea. But reading Lucian, reading Galen, reading Josephus, and also reading Luke here, we see that ancient writing did not just hang on oral tradition, although that was central and important. It also hanged on note-taking, particularly notes from eyewitnesses. But note-taking. So what that means is the material of the Gospels would not have changed with so-called Chinese whispers, because there were already notes written down. So if anything's changing with the oral tradition, it can be checked with the note-taking that was already done. Now, this is a thought that smashes at least 150 to 200 years of scholarship in modern scholarship. It absolutely obliterates many, many theories of literary criticism that have developed on the idea that the Gospels were written on the basis of oral tradition and oral tradition alone. And it also smashes the idea that the Gospels were late productions, because if it's oral tradition, then John McDroper talks about literacy. Let me tell you about literacy. You wouldn't know this, John, but if you read Edersheim, there was actually hundreds of schools in and around Jerusalem. Hundreds. You didn't know that, did you? That every Jewish boy had to have an education. And there was even rich people that donated to the temple so that the other synagogues could do their teaching. Okay? And correct me if I'm wrong, but most of, apart from Luke, those who were involved in the production of the New Testament were Jews. So they would have been educated. There were schools, and they were good schools. They had a good education for that time. And there was hundreds of them, because the synagogues were also used as schools. Okay? So the point that I'm saying is that, and also in order to do business, you had to write notes. You had to make notes. You had to give a sale of bill and things like that. We found in rubbish dumps in Egypt from the 1st century slips and notes and even letters. So, there we are. So that answers your question there, John. But what I'm saying is the Gospels were not late productions in the 2nd century AD from oral tradition, which Bultmann would say. Look up Edersheim, Alfred Edersheim, and also Google rubbish dumps of Egypt manuscripts found, and see what you find there, bro. But the point is, Rudolf Bultmann and many of these scholars said that the Gospels were late productions. They were produced by groups because it was communities that shaped the oral tradition. Okay, but what I'm presenting to you, it's from Evans, Dr. Evans, but I've also said this before without using him, that they had notes. They wrote notes, which means that if they wrote notes, it's not going to be a long process of 100 years where oral tradition is shaping the message. Those notes were done by individuals, and those notes would have been done by very often people who were eyewitnesses, because Galen and Lucian talk about that. So it shows you that the Gospels are much, much earlier, because those notes would have had to been written into production. So what you had the notes, the written notes, and then you put your material in order. The thesis, the point what I'm making is, before a gospel is written, there would have been notes, and they would have been seen that this was important to produce an orderly production. And if you go into the early church fathers, you look at Papias mentions this. Okay? He mentions this. So what it means is the Gospels were not changing over time, over like 100 years. Right at the beginning, there were notes, and these notes would have been put into orderly account by individuals, not communities. That's very important to demolish the Bultmann theories. Okay, I hope that's an interest to you. Ancient writing, the way it was produced, they wrote notes. before they actually produced the main book, which means it's not just oral tradition. Oral tradition can be very, very good, but it wasn't just oral tradition. There were written notes as well. Hope that's interesting. John McDuffie, God bless you. Take care, bro. And God bless you, everybody else. God be with you. Take care now. Bye now.